Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. Pundits on CNN, MSNBC, and The View called for the censorship of social media after Donald Trump wound up winning the 2024 election.
I think in a normal country, we would say, hold on a second, maybe we need to have a different set of regulations for social media platforms now they're this big.
It would help if we could regulate social media, because one of the biggest offenders is D.C. and Congress have not been able to do one thing in regard to the rogue corporations of social media.
And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way slowly to a full-blown fascist politic. We don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction.
Now, the pundits on MSNBC, CNN, and The View implored Americans to go out and look to preserve so-called democracy by supporting presidential candidate Kamala Harris in the 2024 election to preserve freedom of speech and freedom of expression that they propose that presidential candidate Donald Trump would take away from Americans if he were elected president. However, after the 2024 election was done and Kamala Harris wound up losing the election, many of these same pundits over at MSNBC, CNN, and The View are now talking a different talking point where they have made an about face of looking to go out here and preserve freedom of speech and freedom of expression as related to preserving democracy, and now are calling for the censorship of social media that they said that Donald Trump would implement if he became the next president of the United States. Now, this complete about face basically shows the hypocrisy of those on the left as related to the whole talking point of preserving so-called democracy, and shows how completely full of it these individuals are, because according to these individuals, the only way democracy can be preserved is if their candidate winds up winning the election. And their calls for censorship basically are ones that show how hypocritical they are, because they only want the censorship of social media now that their candidate wound up losing, and they only want the censorship of social media because they see the impact and influence of social media on the American voting bloc, and because they see the impact of social media on the voting bloc, where people are not listening to these pundits on these TV platforms anymore, now these same individuals are upset and calling for the censorship, and having many people wonder who the real fascist is, because while these same individuals talk about Donald Trump being a fascist, they, by their actions, are showing how they support fascism, because only a fascist looks to censor those who don't agree with their talking points and their viewpoints, and looks to try to control the whole narrative of those who refuse to hear what they have to say or agree with their talking points. Now, the whole issue of censoring social media has been going on for for over a decade. I remember when there were efforts to censor the voices of black men on YouTube, when black men started presenting dissenting talking points to those presented by the gynocentric media for the last 30 years, and when black men started to express their talking points. This is where a group of black women, beta black men, and white leftists worked to campaign to silence the voices of black men, and from 2009 to about 2012, and made an effort to try to drive black men off the platform of YouTube until a class action lawsuit was filed. And after that class action lawsuit was filed as related to violating the First Amendment rights of those black men finally got a chance to go out and express themselves and present their talking points on YouTube without having their videos flagged or having their channels terminated, all for presenting their side of the story. And that's what happened the first time I saw censorship online. The second time I saw censorship online was when the COVID-19 pandemic was going on, and many on social media were coerced into following the government's narratives as related to the pandemic, and this led to the flagging and deleting of many channels, which led to who didn't want to who talked negatively about the jab. And again, all of this censorship went on these social media platforms because people didn't agree with the counterpoint that was presented, and basically showed how those who were talking about preserving democracy really were all filled with hypocrisy in both cases, because it was those on the left who would go out here and look to censor those views that countered theirs. And this call to go out and talk about censoring social media because the people on mainstream media don't like the outcome of an election shows us that those on the left in social media are, while they talk about Donald Trump being a fascist again, are, as related to their words, are all about fascism in their actions and not the democracy that they want to preserve. Now, this whole argument about preserving democracy is turning out to be one big straw man, and one big straw man because while these people talk about preserving democracy, it's basically them using that as a smokescreen to go out here and coerce people into agreeing with them, and that really runs counter to our U.S. Constitution. Now, when it comes to our U.S. Constitution, it clearly gives people the right to freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of expression. And these were rights guaranteed to every American under the U.S. Constitution. And that right to free speech is about preserving the speech that you don't like. And that is why people have a right to, again, express themselves on social media. And if you don't want to hear those voices, you have two choices. You can hit the X at the top of the tab, or you can, if you're on a place like Instagram or Facebook, you can continue scrolling or hit that option button that says not interested in this post, or you can hit that button that just says on Facebook, I don't want to see this person anymore, or you can just unfriend that individual. Those are your choices as related to social media, and what has many of these pundits on MSNBC, CNN, and The View real sour is the fact that no one is watching them. Moreover, people aren't listening to them on these television platforms because television has basically become obsolete, and television has become obsolete because of decisions made by those in government back in the 1990s with the Telecom Act of 1996, which consolidated media, and the decision to make analog TV signals go digital in 2009. And that led to people no longer watching television on cable or listening to watch cable pundits, where many were captives to those audiences because there was no alternative. However, once the TV networks decided to go and get greedy to try to consolidate their audience and go digital in 2009, this led to the migration of people over to the internet. And as they've gone over to the internet, the influence of TV pundits like those on MSNBC, CNN, and The View has waned as people have gone over to social media to listen to those people like YouTubers like myself and other podcasters like Joe Rogan and many others. And as they have gotten the influence of these individuals online, what's happened is that many people are starting to get their information from those people on social media instead of listening to the pundits on television that basically are out here parroting the views of their corporate paymasters, and the views of their paymasters are ones that look to go out here and silence anyone who doesn't agree with them. Now, as I've said before, those who control the money control the media, and those who control the media control the narrative. But what we're seeing here as related to American media is more people controlling their own money and controlling their own media, and they're starting to create their own narrative by going to social media. And as they've been going to social media, they have been expressing themselves freely on these platforms, presenting their counterpoints on these platforms, and presenting their whole concepts on these platforms. And as people start to connect with many of those on social media, they're getting a completely different viewpoint, and that has many of those in mainstream media upset, because if people start going to social media, that means many of these individuals are going to be out of a job, and as they wind up out of a job, they're upset and sour because they know they no longer have influence over people, the same way Hollywood got the shock of its life when they found out that their entertainers don't have influence over people as related to politics anymore. No, we are no longer in the days where Bill Clinton can go on the Arsenio Hall show, put up a saxophone, and start playing the saxophone and use that to persuade groups like blacks to go out here and vote for him. No, a candidate has to go out here and actually go and talk to the people, which is something I do commend Donald Trump for. And I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, but I do commend him for going out here and talking to people, going on social media, going on podcasts, and talking directly to the people. That's something I can say he was savvy at. Whereas Kamala Harris basically was out here looking to go out here and talk at people, going out here looking to just try to get on these platforms like Shannon Sharp show, basically just telling the people the parroted narratives. But the whole thing is, if you want to preserve democracy, you would have been going out here looking to show what you had to offer as related to choice. And sadly, Kamala Harris did not show that at all, and did not show that on social media. And now what they want to do is take away your choice on social media, because they did not know how to run a campaign, and they did not know how to talk to people on social media. So they want to take away your choice, which is ironic. You want to take away people's choice to have the ability to express their voice on social media, because many of these people on the left didn't know how to talk at all to people on social media, and are upset that social media has been having an influence on elections. And that influence has basically been shown to us with the 2016 election, and they're even more upset these days that the influence is continuing to be shown with the 2024 election, and it's being shown that social media is influencing people not to support their candidates, but to go out here and make their own choices, which is even more ironic. I mean, you have social media basically leveling the playing field as related to changing people's ability to think, to go out here and have their own choices. And what they want to do is take away your choice and take us back to the days of mainstream media, where people could easily be swayed by these reporters on places like MSNBC, CNN, and The View. They want to take us back to the days of the 1990s when, again, Bill Clinton could go play a saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show, and that could get people excited enough to go out here and go look to vote for him. And they don't want us to go to the days where of today, where people can just go out here and read and research about a candidate. Moreover, they can get counterpoints about that candidate from now looking to be more verified sources like those of new black media. No, they don't want you listening to these different voices, because what they want to do is keep you following in the footsteps of a ragdoll entranced, completely spellbound, fitting yourself into the boxes that are acceptable to those on the left side, and be the voter who just goes out here and just does what they're told what they have to do by being told what you want to hear. But those days are over again due to social media, and that's what's got many of these people shocked. It's got them shocked that social media has changed the game, and changed the game to the point where they no longer can go out here and have any influence over the people. And that's why they're calling for the censorship of social media. They want to take us to the days of a social media back like it was in the 2020s, when Twitter was run by Jack Dorsey. And when Jack Dorsey basically was running Twitter, he was basically turning it into a gulag where any sort of counterpoint was basically censored and people were banned from the platform. And the days of Facebook, where during the days of the 2020s, if you just said anything out of line, you were put in Facebook jail. And the days of YouTube, where they continue to look to censor people, especially black people, because they're constantly watching black channels, constantly looking to take down black channels like Your World, Mr. Superboy, again, for trivial matters, or they look to demonetize videos like I did over one word. They practice this fascism on a high level on black platforms, and then now what they want to do is expand that into white platforms, because they don't like hearing those voices on the right, or just the voices of average everyday Americans. I mean, more and more everyday Americans I've been hearing, like Clownfish TV, they were talking about how they had to deal with this censorship, and what they want to do is use tools like the algorithm to silence those who present dissenting views and give them shadow bans and things that would keep them from building an audience, all because they know the influence of people on social media is starting to have an impact not only on business, but is now starting to have an impact on politics. And they really don't like the fact that many of the voices on social media are starting to have an impact on politics and elections. They really can't stand that fact, because they did not expect that to be the outcome of people actually having what happens when people have the chance to express their freedom of speech, their freedom of expression, without the influence of mainstream media. Because I've noticed that whole paradigm shift myself as a publisher who has used social media to promote my books. I've noticed that, again, there has been a complete shift as related to things. Now, I remember in the early days of the internet, many people in the mainstream media dismissed the internet. They thought, oh, it was just going to be a place for e-commerce. But as social media started to become more and more popular, it stopped being all about consumerism and started to be more and more about politics. And what happened was they didn't like the rising voices as related to politics, and they've been making efforts to try to censor those voices, especially those who speak against the left. And I saw this, again, not only with the gender wars of 2009 to 2012, but the rise of new black media as they were starting to talk about issues such as tangibles in exchange for a vote, and started, like people like the late David Carroll, talking about against the Blue Party, as we started to see black voices starting to speak against these parties and looking to build a black agenda. We started to see those on social media getting upset, but those on TV media, the people like the Roland Martins, the people like the Joy Reids and the Don Lemons and many others getting upset, because they started to see their influence over black media starting to wane. And that's what was the canary in the coal mine that started about 2012. And in 2016, this is where we started to see how those black voices started to become more diverse, and started to see white voices, Hispanic voices, Asian voices starting to come out. And as they started to come out and started to influence the 2016 election, those voices basically led to the influence over America, and basically led to the election of Donald Trump. And that's when many in the mainstream first went into their frenzy as related to things, as related to that election. And now they thought they could buy a reprieve in 2020 by trying to, again, push this censorship on people. However, what was happening was, during the days of 2020 to 2024, we did have Elon Musk buy Twitter, and that basically, as I see it, possibly changed the game, because now we had one site basically where people weren't being censored, and that basically gave people a platform to speak as related to their voices without being censored. And now that the 2024 election has passed, these voices have gotten louder and louder on the mainstream side, talking about how we need censorship on social media. And it was just very disturbing to hear those who said that they were about preserving democracy talking about censoring social media, because they did this on the air of an American TV show and American TV shows, and that should just trouble everyone in America, that you have voices on American TV media talking about the censorship of people on social media. I mean, that in and of itself should trouble every American, because here you have American citizens talking about taking away the First Amendment rights of the American people as related to their freedom of the speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of expression. They want to take away people's voices on these platforms, all because their candidate lost. And that type of censorship is the kind of censorship that the same fascists that they said Donald Trump would be is what they are. And it should trouble most American people that you have people on these mainstream platforms talking about taking away people's rights on these platforms of social media. Again, social media that was designed to bring people together, but it seems like you can only have social media if it's the people they want to be brought together to agree to their talking points. And that's what we call on social media an echo chamber. And in an echo chamber, people just hear what they want to hear constantly without ever having to deal with a reality of the actual free speech, where you have to hear the speech that you don't like. And if you have to have a platform where you have to hear the speech that you don't like, these people can't cope with that reality. And when they can't cope with that reality, what these people do is they go out here and they start looking to censor people. They go out looking to censor people because they have to deal with speech that they don't like. But what I don't like is the reality of these people on mainstream media calling for the censorship of social media. No, that's not what we do in a republic like the United States with a constitution. We don't call for the censorship of anyone. No, we don't call for the censorship of anyone because your candidate wound up losing an election. No, the same way you can try to take away somebody's free speech is the way somebody can try to take away your free speech. And that runs counter to our U.S. Constitution. And again, if you cannot follow the U.S. Constitution, then as I see it, then there should not be a place for you on the air of any of these platforms, because again, censorship in any form is wrong. People do need to hear the counterpoint along with the talking point, and we need to hear both sides of the argument so we can go out here and make our own decision, because that's the American way. No, when it comes to America, you don't give a right to tell people what they can or not, let's say, on social media, or what people can be influenced by. And again, many of these people on television are just really butthurt because no one is listening to them anymore. And as they made people pleased to implore people to vote for Kamala Harris, they fell on deaf ears, and with them falling on deaf ears, this is telling the executives who run the network that these voices in and of themselves are ineffective. And what's got these people spooked is that they're about to lose their jobs because they cannot have any impact on the audience. And since they can't have any impact on the audience because they no longer have influence over the audience, many of these executives who are now running these big six media platforms are possibly looking at MSNBC, CNN, and The View and wondering if they are worth keeping on the air, or if they should just get rid of these people. And that's what's got these people so spooked, because they have been eliminated basically as competition, because social media has replaced them as competition. And as social media has gained influence over people, they know that these pundits no longer have control of the narrative. And even worse, they've gone out here and alienated more of we the people with their whole statements of censoring people, because when you call for the censorship of people on social media, that's one of the most un-American things you could do. I mean, that basically is them proving the point that they were all the time projecting on the Donald Trump their own ideas for America, projecting their own viewpoints of Donald Trump on America. And I have to wonder if who is the true fascist, the one who is out here going out here like they say Donald Trump is, looking to as related to things, or is it them? Because again, in their actions, you're on the air talking about censoring people on social media, and again, it doesn't get more un-American than talking about censoring people on social media. I mean, that's bad enough. We've already got censorship on these platforms, where you've got places like YouTube where you can get demonetized over a single word, where you can get shadow banned for expressing differences of opinions, or places like Facebook where they just basically look to put people in Facebook jail over minor opinions or posts that people made 10, 15 years ago. I mean, it's bad that people can't go out here and express themselves. I mean, it was fine for people to be friends on MySpace until the friends started to have influence over politics, and it was okay when they're out here just basically making pages. But it seems like when social media starts to show the person, again, looking to use their ability to have political power, that's when people have problems with social media, because that's when they see that their influence over people is weakening, and that's something that they are upset. And again, great irony, because it shows how many of these people who talked about preserving democracy were filled with hypocrisy. They only want you making the choices they want you to make and listening to the things they want you to hear. But when you start to think for yourself and you start to make your own choices, that's when they want to censor you, similar to what I experienced in the black community as a teenager, where if you didn't act the way that people thought was black, or fit yourself in a black box that was acceptable to white people, then you could not be allowed to even think about living, and everybody wanted to make your life a living hell until they could make you conform. And that's basically what they want to do on social media, make people's lives on social media a living hell until they conform to the way they want them to talk or think. And that in and of itself is, again, a horrible place to be, as I was in the black community as a teenager. That kind of pseudo-fascism that went on in the black community is what they want to bring to people as related to things on social media. And this is the thing that people have to push back on, because no one has a right to tell you what you want to say or how to think on platforms that tell you to broadcast yourself, or tell you to go out here and talk to your family and friends. And no people on mainstream media should have any right to tell anybody what to say on social media, especially when you look at the hypocrisy that goes on there. I mean, you want to go after people for not looking to support a candidate on platforms like YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, but you'll have white supremacists like the one who wound up murdering his father. He was able to keep a video up for 12 hours. It was perfectly fine in that. And they have no problem with that as related to things until it gets to the mainstream media. But they'll leave that up there. But the whole minute people start to talk about the views that they have as related to supporting a candidate they don't like, that's when they want to talk about censorship. And it just shows how full of it those on the left are as related to things. I mean, when your candidate loses, you want censorship, but you don't want to take a minute to assess whether you picked a good candidate or even had a platform or an agenda that would appeal to people. That's what really makes these guys completely messed up. They have no problem sitting there looking to silence people, but they don't want to hear how they basically messed up. I mean, I would think you would want to focus on trying to figure out where you went wrong, but instead of looking to figure out where you went wrong, you go even wronger by going out here and looking to propose to censor people. And I think the best thing people can do with CNN, MSNBC, and The View is practice our constitutional right to censor those who go out here and present content that basically is ones that are un-American, by going out here and exercising our constitutional right to change the channel. Now, if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, you can You can pick up those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box. And if you'd like to see me make more videos taking celebrities to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and ebook, The Man Who Rules the World. John Haynes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.